What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Wanted to go live to talk about some best ball. Hope everyone's doing wonderful on this Thursday. Kicking off NFL Week 8 tonight with Vikings Rams, I believe. No teams on bye. Let the people stroll in. Not been doing as many streams once the season starts. Not as many drafts to rip, of course. I like talking ball with Davis, but inevitably turns into Davis trying to FUD a player and me being a homer for disagreeing. Shared some info today, which I guess it shouldn't be that surprising that the reading comprehension is a struggle for some, but this really isn't arguable. Derrick Henry drafters, they have a type, right? Does this opine whether Henry was a good pick or not? No, it doesn't. I myself said the case for Derrick Henry smashing the season is roughly 1,500 yards, 18 to 20 touchdowns, 15 to 20. Seems on pace for that, right? Good for him. Do I think Derrick Henry was a great draft pick to go all in on? No, I don't. Does that, has that changed? No, right? Could he be healthy the whole season? Yes. Could he be the key to winning Best Ball Mania? Yes, right? Like these aren't debatable. This is the case. Why do I think Derrick Henry wasn't the greatest guy to go all in on? Number one, he's old. He's 30. Fact check that. 30. He has a lot of career touches. He's dealt with injury and he plays beside a mobile quarterback. Could Derrick Henry break his leg this week? Yes. Does that mean he was a bad pick? No, but it is part of the thesis of fading him. The year of BBM3, you had Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, and Derrick Henry still as first round picks. I full faded all three. Zeke and Kamara stunk that year. Henry did not. He crushed that year, and then he got hurt, which was part of the thesis, right? But Henry drafters, they were far more likely to take Najee Harris around 4K teams versus Chase Brown around 2,800 teams. Despite Najee being, he was a little more expensive, right? And this isn't a Derrick Henry's a bad pick. Derrick Henry drafters are idiots. They take Najee. They like that, right? Another example is if we look up Derrick Henry, they love them some Calvin Ridley, right? I don't think it's 7K teams. Brian Thomas Jr., same cost as Calvin Ridley, actually a little bit cheaper, roughly 3,000. Rome Odunze, same cost as Calvin Ridley, 4,000. So Derrick Henry drafters unquestionably liked Calvin Ridley more. Is this saying that every single Derrick Henry drafter did that? No. That would be an example of you having poor reading comprehension if you think that, right? Like this guy saying, not every Derrick Henry drafter has a type. Brother, I know, right? The group of Derrick Henry drafters, though, did have a type. They liked Calvin Ridley. So what we know from this is that at least this year, and I think it's pretty safe to project going forward, it's not that surprising that Derrick Henry drafters kind of like what I would call projectable volume in a way. Let's check the Jaylen Warren versus Najee. And they also like chasing touchdowns. So Jaylen Warren, 2,500, Najee Harris, 4K, right? So why would a Henry drafter like Najee? Well, because a lot of Henry drafters are thinking, how do I capture the touchdowns on the offense? They don't care about how efficient you are. They don't care about how explosive you are. They don't care about how good you are. They're trying to capture the guy who they think can score touchdowns for the offense. Maybe that's a solid way to approach the game. More importantly, how does a thinking best ball player take advantage of this? Well, if you find yourself in the future years being like, I don't really love this guy like a Derrick Henry, but you think there's some merit to taking him. I would put myself in that bucket. What does that mean? Well, that means that, maybe it's pretty sharp to mix in Derrick Henry. So rather than full fading him, maybe you get 3%, 5%, a little safety blanket. And more importantly, you build the Henry teams with how you usually draft. So not only are you getting Henry, but more importantly, you're not drafting like the prototypical Henry drafter. You're drafting him, rather than pairing him with a lot of shitty picks, which Henry drafters inherently did with guys like Najee, guys like Calvin Ridley. Instead, maybe you're going to have the rare team with Derrick Henry and Brian Thomas Jr. or Derrick Henry and Chase Brown, some guys that you might rather have if you land in the finals. So this isn't new this year, right? It's not too difficult to think through who does the zero running back crew prefer, who does the alpha RB crew prefer, and more importantly, like how are those combinational pairings happening in future drafts? How is Najee a shitty pick? I mean, Najee's had 2 great games, not debatable. I personally don't think he's a good pick because he's not explosive. He never seemed that likely to score a lot of touchdowns. He went around some other guys who were more appealing. His team didn't pick up his rookie contract. His team was unlikely to be a good offense. So the list goes on. Not explosive, right? So, yeah, I would think through this. And then if you are someone who usually drafts, maybe every year you think the key is to get running backs in rounds 1 and 2. Think through how those drafters are drafting. What are they probably doing? Well, they're probably grabbing a guy like Rashid Shaheed a lot, right? Where there's quite a bit of Henry Shaheed teams, 5,700, because what do they need in the mid rounds? They need wide receiver. Whereas the Nico Collins drafter probably doesn't need Shaheed as much. Just an intuition there, 4,600. But you know who the Nico Collins drafter needs a little bit more? They probably need a running back around the cost of Shaheed. Chase Brown, 5,700, right? We had Derrick Henry and Chase Brown, remember, at 2,700. So there's literally, Nico was paired with Chase Brown, 3,000 more teams than with Derrick Henry. And so you want to think through, and I think a helpful way to do this is to pull up a draft board. You want to think through of how type drafters are drafting. And I would put someone who solely drafts 0 RB, that's a type draft community. That's a thinking community, if you would. If we just pull up this draft board. So, just to show you guys what we're talking about, why I'm pulling these examples. Rashid Shaheed, roughly a 10th round pick. Chase Brown, also roughly a 10th round pick. Derrick Henry, roughly a 4th round pick. Nico Collins, roughly a 2nd. Doesn't really matter. Expensive wide receiver, expensive running back. The expensive running back drafter, we're assuming that they're not just going wide receiver, Derrick Henry. That I think would be a sharp way to mix in Henry if you didn't like this archetype. And then these running back drafters, they need Shaheed, they need Shakir, they need Wicks, they need Mitchell. They're drafting the wide receivers in these rounds because they took running backs early, right? They're trying to have good structure. The Nico drafter, maybe they're building a little bit 0 RB more. AJ Brown, Nico, Tank. You see how I built this team here. So instead, maybe you just push it around, or you take an earlier round. So if you're the Henry drafter, trying to get some wide receivers in 6, 7, 8, rather than just waiting until the Shaheeds of the world. Or if you're the Nico drafter, rather than waiting until the 8th round, maybe you mix in a 4th round running back, a 5th round running back, Ken Walker, White, Cook, etc. So it's really just thinking through how to not build with a group think mentality, right? You may think it's optimal to build a certain way, but you want to think about, fighting the duplication some ways where, of course, we're not worried about a perfectly duped team. It's not what anyone's worried about. More so how this plays out is not how you can it's really tough to tangibly measure this, but when you get to the playoff rounds, week 15, week 16, and you're trying to get a team to the finals, you would if you have Derrick Henry on your team, what you would hate is let's say your Derrick Henry team is like Bijan, Saquon, Derrick Henry. You would hate being in a pod with like four other teams like that. If instead you're the only Derrick Henry team, but instead of having those running backs, you have two wide receivers, obviously healthy is the assumption. Um, you inherently have a different Derrick Henry team than the other people in your pods, which just gives you an easier time of advancing if Derrick Henry is the key to advancing, right? Let's just get this loser out of here. I mean, fading anyone is risky, right? I'm comfortable making the fade because BBM5 is a top heavy tournament where I'm trying to win $1.5 million. I don't care if I'm playing risky, right? We're all going to lose. So try to play for first is my mentality. But yeah, I mean, there's many examples of this, right? Like if you get triggered by me using Derrick Henry as an example, speaks a little bit more to you um, than to me. But I don't know, what's a player that won't trigger people as much as Derrick Henry? For some reason, the running back crowd is just really a little sensitive when you bring up that how the season's going isn't always going to go that way. Maybe AJ Brown, right? AJ Brown, he was paired with Jalen Hurts. Let's see, 28,000 teams. And let's see how much often he was paired with Josh Allen. 3,500. Same cost, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. Now, unquestionably, I want to be stacking. However, there comes a point where the best ball community as a whole is not filled with the drunk frat bro who discovers best ball on a whim and is trying to draft Tom Brady in round one, but they've watched a video from myself or Pete or Davis or someone. So they have the rough idea. They understand the basics. They're trying to stack, etc. So you have to ask yourself, is the stacking with AJ Brown and Hurts worth it where it's literally being done at an 8x multiplier? Probably not, right? Like, is it saying never stack AJ Brown with Hurts? No, right? Their ceilings are correlated. But can AJ Brown score 25 fantasy points and Jalen Hurts scores 20 fantasy points? So it's like a good quarterback score, but not the winning score. And in the same game, Josh Allen scores 40. Or Lamar Jackson, who was paired with AJ Brown, 1,300, even less because he was on a different side of the board. If you remember the boards, like if I can just pull up a random board here. If you remember, where Lamar went in this draft was not common with paired with AJ Brown. Lamar more commonly went at the 4-5 turn, and Hurts more commonly went here, and Allen went more commonly here, and Lamar and Mahomes more commonly went here. So that's why AJ Brown was paired with Josh Allen around 3,500. He was paired with Lamar only 1,300 because AJ Brown lived on this side of the board and Lamar lived on this side of the board. So these are sharp ways to me to get different from people drafting. Like, so, if we can condense 28,000 teams into, let's pretend the 500 person final has 15 Hurts AJ Brown teams, and it has one Lamar AJ Brown team, and it has two Josh Allen AJ Brown teams. Do you want to be one of the 15? Or would you rather have the one or two that simply has a different quarterback who can get there on the ground, so it doesn't need to be correlated with AJ Brown? Unquestionably, to me, I'd rather have the Lamar or Allen team with AJ Brown than I would to have a Hurts team, right? Are there going to be seasons where the chalk stack combo gets there? Yes, I think last year is an example, right? The chalk 1-2 turn thing to do amongst like sharp people was like, oh, CD Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Turns out the chalk gets there sometimes. That was effectively the nuts last year. But are there many years where you don't need the perfectly chalk combo and getting a little different is going to literally pay? Yes, right? Appreciate you guys watching. Gonna try to do more best ball streams. Just reframing this past week. Wasn't a good week for my bags, primarily because um where can I go here? Primarily because I drafted a lot of Ayuk and we lost Ayuk for the season. So did I need to play this risky and draft Ayuk 22% of the time? No. Why did I do that? Well, I think I'm pretty good at identifying spots, blow up spots for week 17 when actual money is won. And I thought Ayuk was potentially one of the keys to not only reach the finals, but more importantly, win the finals, where I really love the 49ers schedule against the Rams, against the Dolphins, and then they got the Lions week 17. And I knew the Lions had a solid run defense. Essentially, what happened with the Lions is they had a terrible defense 2 years ago. They were bad against the run and the pass. This past year, what they did is they said, you know what we're going to do? We're at least going to be good against the run. We can shore that up. And they were. They were good against the run, meaning they were even worse against the pass. This season, they invested in their passing defense, but it's still not very good. And so, yeah, do I think Ayuk could have given us 35 points week 17? I do. I was kind of happy he was having a lackluster season, trying to get a low on Ayuk. Now it's obviously over for him. Is what it is, right? Like that's going to be the way it happens sometimes in best ball land, right? Guess if we just scope my teams, I'm at 18 teams. Pretty fine spot, honestly. Um, but I'm a little like the underlying numbers, I would say, is not great. Where let's see how many teams I have within 30 points. I don't think that number is that high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Call it 15. Like 18 advancing, 15 plus 15. Some of the 18 are going to drop off. Some of that 15 are going to get there. Can a team make it that is more than 30 points back? Of course it can, right? There's a lot to sort through here where a lot of teams in first right now have Chris Godwin. They're not getting any points the rest of the season. A lot of teams probably have Mike Evans. They're not getting points for a while, right? We have some buys playing out here, both positive and negative for some players where they will regress to the mean. Like Lamar is carrying guys like Andrews as like an advance rate guy on a first place team where maybe Andrews is fully healthy. Still doesn't seem that way to me, right? He had 4 targets, 2 touchdowns, not that replicable. And you can look at this stuff where you can see Godwin is on 20,000 advancing teams right now. So some of these teams are super teams, right? But there's going to be a lot of Godwin teams that were really only advancing because how good Godwin was of a pick so far, and that's we're going to feel that impact, right? If CMC has a 2% advance rate and goes off week 15 and 16, how much CMC would be in the finals? Great question, Best Ball Monster. I can't give you an exact number, right? Like this depends on a lot of variables, but how it generally works is, okay, if you have a guy who is a 40% regular season advance rate, so let's use Raheem Mostert as an example last year. It is almost impossible, even if Mostert puts up 2 0 balls, it's almost impossible for him to be low represented in the finals, where even if Mostert does nothing week 15, week 16, he would still be on, 20 to 30% of finals teams just because he's on literally almost half the teams already. If instead you have a low drafted guy, he's not on many teams week 15, but that guy smashes. That guy will be chalk week 17. because of those 2% teams, almost, 90% are going to make it to week 15. So he might go to 2% to 20%. And then if he smashes again, almost 20, like all those 20% teams are probably making the week 17 finals. So he might literally be represented by week 17 as like 30%, which you're like, oh, I'm one of the only ones who advanced CMC. Look at me. And then it's like, well, shit, this is not the leverage I thought I would have on the finals group. This is all out of your control, of course. A big reason I won Best Ball Mania 2 is because Jamar Chase was only on 8 teams out of 160. So I wasn't competing with that many people in the player pool. I was competing against the 8 other teams, one of which happened to be, Pete Overzet and Eric, friends of the channel. So what you really want if you have a 2% advance rate CMC is you want your team to be good enough to carry him, which obviously it is to make the finals or to make the playoffs. But you want him to put up a stinker either week 15 or week 16, him not hit your lineup, or him put up like a 10-point game, a 12-point game, not a 30 burger, and you want to make the finals. You have a 2% on CMC in the finals. Then your win path is so clear, right? CMC, go for 50. Can he do that? Of course he can, right? And he's low owned. That's how you get mega leverage, right? An example is the year I won BBM2. Both Mark Andrews and Cooper Kupp were around 50 to 60% owned in the finals. So it was so clear, despite them being awesome picks, smashing. You didn't really want them in the finals, again, out of your control, because them doing well doesn't do anything. It doesn't help you separate when everyone has those players. Having anyone else helps you out. A cool thing you can do is you can exclude the injured guys. So thankfully, my Ayuk, I was hopeful a bunch of my Ayuk teams would get there, but most of my advancing teams don't have them. Only 2 do. And a lot of teams in the mix don't have Ayuk. So, if I look at, I don't know, Kittle's a guy I drafted a lot of. I just tried to draft all the 49ers. Somehow I'm only advancing one Kittle team. Shout out me, terrible Kittle drafter, apparently. But, maybe we have hopes where these teams 40, 50 points back. Again, 50 points sounds like a lot until one team scores 100 and another team scores 150 in a week. And then that lead has been vanished in a singular week. So I don't know, maybe this team. It's got Burrow and Caleb, so it dealt with a bye. It probably is too shitty at running back, being honest, looking at it. Like Ford, injured. Lloyd, injured. Chuba, going to be in a 1B soon. Kendre, he's active now. He's hitting the lineup somehow. Pretty sad. Roshan, he's fine. Shipley only gets garbage time. Evan Hull, he actually got 3 snaps, so possible, but not right now. Chase, Adams hasn't been playing. Moore hit the bye. Higgins, Lockett, Shaheed out for the year. And then a strange triple tight end team. I think this team I lagged my internet, and so either this team, one of the teams I did on purpose, triple elite, and another teams I like my Wi-Fi skipped, and so I autoed a third elite tight end. I don't know if it was this draft or another draft. So that one, I don't know, right? This team, Rashad White. I think Rashad White is a huge winner of the Godwin injury. He was looking like a pretty bust of a pick, but I think he's just going to stay involved. He's going to get a lot more receiving work now, I think. Zamir White, terrible draft pick. Swift, he's smashing through the bye, so he's underrepresented right now. Jalen Wright, not doing so hot. Braylon Allen, a little worse since the coaching change, but I still think he's a fine guy to mix in. Chase Debo, Neighbors, Flowers, that's all smashes. Mike Williams, you probably want him to get traded to the Chargers. Josh Downs, solid pick, but a little bit worse with Richardson. Jalen McMillan, obviously a huge winner from the Godwin trade. Kincaid and Kittle, strong tight end room. So this one, I don't know. Like if White becomes a second half league winner, I guess it has a good chance. It's got 2 healthy quarterbacks. How do you even balance or account for all these things? No, I mean, you like if you're talking about me discussing how to leverage, that's more just like thinking through, right? How about this one? This one seems like it has a good chance. Hurts and Purdy. So Hurts is already through the bye. Cook, healthy now. Montgomery, banged up, but playing. Moss and Brown. So just took them both. Ford, injured. Also got both the Bills guys. So we're covered there. AJ Brown was injured, through his bye, healthy now. Drake London, he's doing very well. Michael Pittman, not a good pick, but hey, he's on the squad. Adonai Mitchell, no. Ricky Pearsall, I mean, could be a league winner, right? At least he's going to be relevant. Zay Jones, he is playing now, but not a great pick. This was obviously an early drafted team. Demarcus Robinson, not so hot. Odell, I mean, he's playing now. And then Kittle and Likely. I'm kind of curious about the Rashad White teams because I did like, I understand Rashad White was a risky pick because of Bucky. I didn't think he would be Wally pipped right away. So these teams could have some serious juice. Brees, Gibbs, White, Singletary, Roshan seems fine. Caleb and Goff through the bye on Caleb. Metcalf, Flowers, Rome, Deontay, Cooks, Polk, Wandale, DJ Chark. Chark probably playing this week. I seriously think he'll have some spike weeks, unless the Chargers trade for like Darius Slayton or someone. Goddard, Musgrave, bust, and Likely. Yeah, like this team seems pretty good. I think it will get going. Brees, Gibbs, White, pretty solid. Singletary, he's not so hot with Tyron Tracy. This team, pretty solid too. Oh yeah, I wanted to look at my Puka teams. So I drafted a lot of Puka. Most of them are dead, but I do have some. The Puka Bijan combo was very rare to get. Where let's see how many teams there actually are in the contest. Only 179 were lucky enough to get this combo, and I am one of them. And more importantly, well, let's check out the group. The group is advancing only 15 of 179. So there's literally only 15 teams that have Puka and Bijan advancing to the playoffs right now. 8% of that. So if my Puka Bijan team can advance, it's 26 points behind. And Bijan and Puka are the guys you need in the playoffs and finals. Like, when only 15 combos of this advance to the playoffs as is, go off. I don't care if they're chalk in the finals because almost no one has them together. So, like, this is why, like, if you're 150 maxing, this is the type of team where you lock in when you get the start. I know I did because you just know it's so rare. So Love, Knicks, May. So pretty lit quarterback room where like Knicks was my only guy for parts of the season, right? May just started playing. Love was hurt. Bijan looking like a much better pick lately. Chase Brown solid. Rico solid. Ray Davis solid. Braylon Allen solid. Jordan May. I mean, honestly, this running back room is pretty lit. Don't know how it's not advancing straight up. Puka might play tonight. That's the craziest thing. Devonta Smith, Zay Flowers, these guys are solid. Jaden Reed, very solid. Watson, he'll give you some spikes. Jalen Polk seems terrible, but you can change things around in the NFL. Could he still have a week? Sure. And then Josh Downs, a pretty solid guy. And then McBride and Ferguson, like I love this team. No clear zeros. Like maybe you could call Polk the biggest zero on the team. 3 healthy quarterbacks, 2 elite tight ends, 6 running backs that are solid. Like maybe Mason falls off when CMC returns, but even if so, these guys are all effectively starters on the team, and these 2 guys mix in and still play for their teams. So yeah, I love this team. I want this team to make the playoffs. I want this team to make the finals. You just see this team winning, right? Like Bijan against Washington, Puka against Arizona, Flowers against Houston, a pretty nice spot. Love stack against Minnesota, which it's much easier to pass on Minnesota just because their team's pretty good. McBride as the bring back against Bijan or against Puka. Ferguson as the bring back against Smith. I love this team. Yeah. Um, what do I want to look at? I didn't draft that much Christian McCaffrey. Part of that was out of my control. I just didn't get a lot of first or second round picks. Looks like they're all pretty dead. Let's see. Purdy, Mayfield. So this team is 100 points behind. CMC, Moss, Brian Robinson, Dowdle, Ray Davis. So, I mean, maybe. Mike Evans, hurt. DJ Moore through the bye. Pickens just got a big upgrade. Brian Thomas, smash. Watson, live for some spikes. Corley, terrible. McMillan, huge upgrade recently with the Godwin injury. Walker, I mean, he was active, right? Like, not great, but he's active. Cleve Raymond, temporary bump with Jameson Williams, injured. And then Kincaid and Ferguson, 2 tight ends who can spike in a given week. I mean, the team looks pretty good. It really requires like more Pickens, Thomas, McMillan, and Watson to have some big weeks. Kincaid and Ferguson to have some big weeks. And CMC to return soon. $50 points feels like a lot when the rosters are so big. Not really, man, because think about it. So, okay, so week 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So you have 7 weeks to make up whatever deficit you have. So if you're down 50 points, that's less than 10 points a week, right? And again, it's usually not like this. It's usually not like I score 120, you score 125. I made up 5 points on you. A lot of times it's I scored 150, you scored 200 the week before, but this week you scored 100. So I just made up 50 points on you this given week, right? I've seen teams come back from 100 points in like 3 weeks, right? Or less, 2 weeks sometimes. It really depends. Like if you scored the most in your pod and the team that is scoring well scores poorly, everything can be made up. For example, a lot of guys who are doing well right now have week 14 buys. That alone is going to drop Lamar, Henry, Nico, where they've not had their bye this season. They won't until the very last week either. So I don't know. Maybe outside chance of the CMC team. My Lamb teams, I doubt like Lamb is just not crushing right now. He was the guy I had more. So I have 14 Lamb teams and 6 CMC teams. So pretty under expectation where I got 20 first or second round picks. One's advancing. Lamar and Trevor, David Montgomery, Pollard, Charbonnet, Gibson, Vidal, P. Ryan, Sermon, Lamb, Neighbors, Moore, Flowers, Coleman, Gabe, John Mechie, Bowers, Schultz. Man, Schultz has contributed 4 points. Insane. But maybe this team can make up some ground. Kyron, Kamara, Warren, Rico, Shipley, Lamb, Evans, Kirk, Hopkins, Mike Williams, Dobbs, McCaffrey, Kincaid, Conklin. My 150 auto puppy teams. What happened there is I came home from Ireland and like I updated my ranks. I updated my ranks weekly through the summer. But I came home from Ireland and I was doing a ranking update the next day, but I noticed the puppy was like 98% full and I was exhausted, right? Like I was at 0 energy, so I couldn't even draft. So I didn't update the rankings and I autoed off the stale ones. And so what happened is I just got like I had Ayuk probably like 3 spots ahead of his ADP. So I got Ayuk in almost all of them. So that's not going well. I also got Jamar Chase on all of them. So I don't know. I'm advancing like a couple of them, but I'm assuming it's going to go very poor with Ayuk on. Literally, I have like 60% owned of a bunch of players in the puppy just because my rankings were stale by like a week or so. If the Rams win tonight, can they stay relevant for the playoffs? I don't know, man. Like, yeah, I read an opinion that like, oh, Stafford's gonna pepper Cup to try to get higher draft capital. Stafford doesn't want Cup getting traded. Stafford likes Cup. So Vikings, winnable game. They're the worst team, but winnable. Seahawks, winnable game. Dolphins, I mean, like tough schedule, right? These 3 games. Patriots, absolute must win. Eagles, tough. Saints, absolute must win. Bills, I mean, this schedule just seems too hard to me, right? Because they're at least they're either going to be not favored or within a field goal spread of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and maybe 9 of their last 10 games. So I don't know. I still think you can get there in fantasy, but it's going to be weird if this is like Stafford's last year, you know. I have doubts this occur. I mean, he's going to play some, man, but yeah, I would put him in like the Devontae Walker bucket where, I mean, he's on the field. What am I expecting for Cup tonight? You got to play him if you have him, man. Unless you're like in a 10-man league. How my Cup team's doing? 0 for 13. This one's got a shot. Ayuk, ouch. Cup, Rome, Shakir, Burton. So this one was drafted early. Mooney, keeping the team together. Komet, keeping the team together. Kamara, you know, holding the team in contention here. Josh and Caleb. I'm really excited for the Caleb Williams teams where their schedule is just pretty easy, and I mean they could go on a big run, right? Like, is that guaranteed? Of course not. They could be disappointing after a bye, but Commanders, kind of a smash spot. Cardinals, a smash spot. Patriots, not a good team. Team's kind of quitting on their coach. Packers, kind of a tough defense, but could be a shootout. Vikings, inherently a little bit more pass heavy. Lions, more pass heavy. 49ers, probably a big game for them. Vikings, a little bit more pass heavy. Lions, pass heavy. And then Seahawks, not a great defense to me. Could go either way. So Bears pieces, super fun. Man, I'm 0 for 20 on my Caleb Williams teams. Rough. This team's 4 points out, though. I think it gets there. This one's 15 points out. We just looked at that one. This one's 50 points out. I don't know about this running back room. Thoughts on Bateman being a smash? I mean, I don't think Bateman is a smash. I think he had one great week, right? So if that's your definition of a smash, if a guy has one spike week, okay. This is going to short my computer out, but we'll look at it for a second here. Yeah, he went 121 receiving yards in one singular game. He did score 2 other touchdowns, but like 11.8, 8.8, these are standard scoring. So, I mean, he's been a very solid pick at cost. I would not put him in the league winner bucket. Is he going to have more spikes? Yes, he's definitely going to have more spikes. Swift is another fun guy where I don't think you like him as much for the Vikings and Lions games. Like, could he get there? Sure. Lions revenge game. But the Seahawks game seems more his speed. Looks like I'm advancing 4 of my 22 Swift teams. Yeah, it's been a rough, quite a ride with Swift where it was looking like a terrible pick. Now he's looking pretty much like a league winner. Who's a wide receiver 1 you would trade for and manage if you had a boatload of wide receiver 2s? I mean, Nico Collins, if someone would trade him injured. I'd also try trade for like T. Higgins. I think Amari Cooper is drawing very live to be a smash with Buffalo. Yeah, and there's a lot of guys I would trade for if you want to give me some more specifics there. Achan obviously, and the Miami pieces looking like they could make a strong resurgence. 1 for 20 on my Achan teams. This one, yikes. It's got Ayuk, it's got Rice. So, not so hot. This team, it's got Chase, Cooper, Higgins, Rome, Mike Evans missing time, Fields out. It's down to solo Knicks. Running back room is solid. Tight end room is fine. Man, I wish the Broncos would trade Greg Dulcich. I regret drafting any Broncos except for Bo Nix. He's been fine. Well, I mean, people are just kind of what have you done for me lately, right? Like, people are not going to reflect on the season and be like, "Oh, Rashee Rice got hurt or Nico Collins missed 4 games or any of that," right? They're just going to be like, "No, what happened is what happened, of course." And that's how it always would be. Nico Collins only got 3 of my 21 teams. A bunch in the mix, so yeah, that injury stings for me, but hoping to get a lower owned Nico into the finals. What are some other interesting combos to look at to show how people are drafting? Uh, I don't really want to trade away Metcalf, but Nico is just like one of the best players in fantasy. So I haven't read about his injury recently in the timeline. I'm assuming it's soon. If you read the timeline is soon, pull the trigger, man. Why not? Um, I guess like Saquon and Henry would be an interesting thing where fancying a bunch of my stream drafts, by the way. Let's see. Saquon in the second, Henry in the fourth. So like Saquon and Henry versus Saquon and Zay Flowers, I think would be interesting. Similar costs on all these guys. So 5,300 Saquon Henry teams. 3,000 Flowers teams. And then let's check Achan because Achan was like a running back that the zero RB crowd like. So Achan and Flowers, 2,700. Achan and Henry, 2,300. So it's not gonna be clear on every player. That one clearly no tangible difference to me. What about Achan and Michael Pittman? 1,900. What about Michael Pittman and Saquon? 4,600. So yeah, I mean this again, it's not saying everyone. That's not what group means, right? But the Saquon drafters as a group were okay taking a guy like Michael Pittman, a guy who many, including myself, thought was a pretty bad pick at cost. Why? Because they're kind of chasing who's been good in the past, is what I would say there. Number one wide receivers, cheap number one wide receivers. No, one usable tight end, totally fine, man. Especially in an injury year. Why are we looking at Henry exposures? We're looking at how certain drafters drafted. So a more robust running back drafter like Michael Pittman. Like I bet Michael Pittman was paired with Najee far more than Jalen Warren. 6,000, 6,100 teams. Warren, same cost as Najee, 3,700. Chase Brown, similar cost to Najee and Warren, 3,200. So it just shows you that the type people have, and this you can think through this on a couple players. So, next year, if there's a Michael Pittman-esque guy, and you don't like him, but you're like, "Oh, I wanna have 3%." I would make sure I'm not pairing those Michael Pittmans with a guy who I think the Michael Pittman drafters is drafting a lot, you know? Kyron has been a dud. Kyron's been a league winner, I think. He's not been, scoring 50 points, but he's a 22% advance rate guy. It's above average. There's one question I just scrolled and missed. What is chalk at the 11-12 turn? You're talking about the 1-2 turn. Um, no, I don't think Gibbs London was chalk. I think Puka Marvin was pretty chalky. You couldn't always get it, but it was 12,000 teams. Gibbs, yeah, maybe Gibbs London. Maybe it was Gibbs and London. 4,000 teams. So no, actually not that common. Um, who was Gibbs paired with a lot? Maybe Jonathan Taylor. Gibbs and JT, 4,500. Maybe Nico? Not really, because Nico moved up and down the board. Only 1,000 teams like that. Thoughts on Marvin Harrison Jr.? I think, he a smash pick at cost? No. It's pretty risky to draft a rookie at the 1-2 turn. Do I think he can be fine? Yes. He literally gets the Rams where he dropped what, like 30 fantasy points against them already this season? How much would I pay for the one Bijan Brees team? Well, let's look at it. Career Lamar, Daniels, Carr should have just eaten the 0 points week 14. Wasted a pick on Carr. Bijan Brees, Swift, Brown, and pretty much a 0. Flowers, Reed, nice. Ridley, not so nice. Rice, out for the year. Wicks, fine. Bateman, fine. McCaffrey, fine. A.T. Perry on a practice squad. Goddard, Sinnott. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know, guys. Like, anytime you land a very rare combo and have 2 rushing quarterbacks, just eat the 0 week 14 and don't end your draft with a Carr A.T. Perry stack. Like, I wouldn't pay that much for this team because it's got some zeros. It's got Calvin Ridley, who is effectively dead. So it's really only got 3 wide receivers, maybe 4 that can spike in a given week. I don't think it can make it through the playoffs unless Bijan and Brees are literally like dropping 40 points each week. Yeah. Just like little mistakes like that kills you. Can you advance with it? Yeah, man. You can advance with a lot of things. Advancing though is not even half the battle. Andrew saying he has a lot of Kyron, meaning he doesn't have Henry. That'll be interesting to look at. Did Kyron drafters not draft Henry? I would think that they would pair them together some. 1,800 teams. I mean, they certainly paired him with Saquon more. 5,300. No, I don't think so. And look, last year's Cooper and last year's Pickens, like it wasn't like, oh, thank God I have these. No, those were major suckouts where both of their quarterbacks missed the game and the backup quarterbacks propelled them to their best weeks all year. Calvin Ridley seems like a terrible pick to me. I didn't really draft him at all anyways. And he's not like a guy like, look, you're excited for any low-owned guy because maybe he can have a random spike, but I don't see things getting better for the Titans. They are selling their roster right now. They're trading away players. You'd buy that team for $25.67. Fair. Will be fair. Let's see how often Garrett Wilson was paired with Josh Allen. Obviously, a week 17 correlation. 12,000 teams compared to Jalen Hurts. 2,200 teams. So that's another example where we looked at the Hurts and AJ Brown combo compared to the AJ Brown Josh, AJ Brown Lamar. Garrett Wilson pairing him with any elite quarterback other than Josh is inherently going to have you a much more unique team. I'd prefer Mason because now you have Jalen Warren healthy. I don't really believe that Najee's going to be able to keep up this momentum. And, CMC could return and get hurt. First round focus should be floor and injury risk. That's my takeaway, at least. It is. The first round is somewhat of a safety. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, was a safe pick. And that has value. At the same time, though, like you do want to shoot for ceiling almost everywhere because landing a ceiling player, which I think Derrick Henry is a ceiling player. He's a risky ceiling player, but he's a ceiling player. It's just a reminder that when the ceiling players repeatedly hit their ceilings, it just smashes. If Puka plays tonight, you starting him? Really depends what my other options are, Tolan, but probably. Ridley without Hopkins should be a smash. Dude, no. He averages like 10 uncatchable targets a game. So I don't think they can be a smash. It's just the quarterback play is that bad. Your username is you. Usually I wouldn't do this, but only because your username is YOU. Sure. Doing good, you. Top 500 team. Brees, Henry, Javonte, Singletary. So yeah, I think Henry drafters like Javonte. No shot at you, but I do think this was kind of combo. Lamar Baker, nice. You got Palmer and McMillan. Wow, dude. And Godwin. So you profited off the Godwin injury, but you had the Godwin injury. Hopkins looking up. Cooper nailing both the trade guys, Cooper and Hopkins. Low on Marvin is pretty nice. Komet likely, Juwan, totally fine. Looks like a good team. I am curious what Marvin's advance rate is right now. 12%. Pretty strong. How many teams have both Cooper and Hopkins? They were probably paired quite a bit together because getting in the mind of a Cooper drafter, which is trying to draft the number one, a cheap number one, right? Who's been explosive in the past. It's similar to Pittman, but it's different to me. They probably quite liked Hopkins, who was the same thing. Cheap number one. I know some people were making the parallels that the Titans duo could be like the Bucks duo last year. 4,500 teams with them both. Whereas I think like Worthy was priced similar to Cooper. Only 2,800 there. So yeah, the Cooper drafters definitely had a type. And that type was cheap number one wide receivers on probably not great teams. Yeah, I mean, okay, again, this is a reminder. Maybe Crane's not having a great year advance rate wise. The man won $2 million. And it's a reminder that no matter what you want best ball to be, best ball is not the game of advance 100% of your teams and it means that you win all the money. It's not what we're playing. You would much rather, I would much rather play risky every year. Isn't this the poker guy, Tony Dunst, by the way? You would rather play really risky. So like taking huge stands and advancing 0 teams some years, right? Some years you advance 0 teams. But let's say once in who makes more money? The guy who wins the contest once every 10 years or the guy who advances 50% of his teams every year, it's the guy who wins the contest, period, right? You profit $1.5 million one year or more. You lose 3K the other years. You've profited roughly $1.45 million versus the guy who's advancing all his teams, making a finals occasionally, never winning. Maybe they profit 3 grand, right? So, yeah, as Marcus says here, it just takes one team. Things do change quickly, right? I didn't love all of my I didn't love my BBM2 finals team at all points of the season. That team went through a wild run, right? It had Christian Kirk was up and down, Rashad Penny was up and down. Um, yeah, I mean, like if you're someone who thinks your edge is advancing out of 12-man pods, how are you going to make more money? Probably playing cash games and just getting a lot of action down. Also, you could just be running hot one year, right? That okay, let's say I drafted 100% Nico Collins and you drafted 100% Derrick Henry. Nico got hurt, Derrick Henry didn't, and let's pretend Henry doesn't get hurt. Did you play better than me or did you get lucky? Probably lucky, right? And that there's luck in all sorts of this. There's luck that you wouldn't even consider when you draft, such as, oh, I don't know, a player dying on the field for 10 seconds and the game getting canceled. Yes, that happened one year, right? Or I don't know, a global pandemic occurring. Yes, that happened one year. So that's all variance. It's all luck, if you would. It washes out in the long run. But yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to realize your equity in something like we're playing here, which is Best Ball Mania 5. That's usually what I'm framing my discussion around, not smaller, higher stakes best ball contests. Yeah, Stefan saying drafted 350 teams, strong advance rate, didn't make any finals. Yeah, our friend hit him with the gritty. I think he's drawing very live to advance a lot of teams and get absolutely 0 teams to week 16. Or he could advance a lot of teams or not and get a lot of teams to week 16. Like one of those two things are happening. Where someone like myself, I either won't advance as much or will advance more, but my semifinals and my finals expectation is always going to be a little bit more smooth. Where I mean, I've typically had 6 teams in the semifinals. That's obviously running hot, but that's obviously building good too. Where he's just duping himself a lot, right? Like this team. Lamar, Herbert, Henry, Stevenson, Najee, Javante, Chubb. Let's just look at the running backs. Henry, Stevenson, Najee, Javante, Chubb. This team. Henry, Stevenson, Najee, Javante, Ford. Okay, so he went a little bit different there. Henry, Stevenson, Najee, Javante. Henry, Stevenson, Najee, Javante. Henry, Stevenson, Javante. Taylor, Henry, Stevenson, Najee, Javante, Chubb. So this is too risky to me. Now there's no getting through to him. He's going to draft how he wants to draft. Getting in the mind of him, he thinks these are the guys that are undervalued. These are the keys. These are the guys that to go all in on. And then he's kind of drafting the same wide receivers too. And you can advance a lot like this. I think it's a very bad strategy to try to win the tournament where obviously if Henry has a bad week 15, he's kind of dead in the water to make any teams to the semifinals and therefore the finals. Or maybe Henry has a smash. Let's say he gets 10 teams to the finals. He's duping himself. He has the 10 same teams. You can only get first once. So you may feel sick if one year you could go first, second, third. That would be awesome. Don't get me wrong. It's not happening, right? But fighting with yourself for first place is inherently bad to try to win, right? I don't agree that it's the same with Davis with the Chiefs. That is a little bit different to me. because Davis is not literally building the exact same team. He is saying that I want Chiefs on all these teams. He's inherently saying they're going to be good picks, but he's layering different players in with the Chiefs stacks. So he has, Chase Brown on some teams. He's got Tyreek on some teams. He's got Justin Jefferson on some teams. He's got CMC on some teams. Like he is not as extreme as far as like drafting the same, or myself, right? Like I drafted a lot of Bills. This year is actually my least risk averse year ever in BBM5 in as far as like my player stands. I just thought spreading it out might be nice for mainly the playoffs, right? Like and also it's not all always purposeful. Where, okay, my max exposure is 30%, but on the Bills guys, I got 30%, 29, 26, 23. So I'm obviously drafting a lot of them, but I'm not building the exact same team. I'm not pairing them all with AJ Brown or all with Derrick Henry. Where if we check out our guy, hit him with the gritty, not to make fun of him, like that's not my point at all. It's just to show like he's one of the most extreme drafters in the player pool. So it's just a really nice illustration of what I think is not personally a great strategy, right? Like he is taking huge duplicated stands. Najee on almost all his teams, Ramondre on almost all his teams, Chase Claypool on almost all his teams, Javante, Mims, Henry, Roman Wilson, Pat Fryermuth, Rashad Bateman, Goddard, Rocker, Tolbert, Chubb. And very little like I guess his version of diversification is literally taking one or two shares of like random guys just in case he's wrong, trying to layer it in with his core. I think a better version of what hit him with the gritty did is rather than having so many players so condensed, let's say you have 4 or 5 guys that you think are 4 or 5 guys who you think are like the key to the season, either week 17 wise or advance rate wise. So let's just pretend you thought it was DJ Moore, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard, and Chase Brown, right? And so on almost all your teams, you try to take those 4 same players, but you build different teams around those 4. So you're always trying to get your core 4. This is kind of like roulette, where if you like flower a number, like you put a chip on a number and then you put chips outside the number. So you're saying you have your core group here that you think is the key, but you're building different textured teams around it, right? And week 17 stacking is a good way to like naturally do this, right? So hope that was a little helpful discussion. Yeah, I was talking about the pro poker guy, Tony Dunst, or commentator. I don't know. I don't know his full, and I don't know if that is him. Zima Freaky. Let's check on the Josh Allen Cooper teams. I don't think I have any because I didn't draft a lot of Cooper. 7 teams. Yeah, I mean, like I should be a little brand loyal to Cooper. He was on my winning Best Ball Mania 2 team. I don't know. For whatever reason, I wasn't. Mainly because I didn't think he was a smash pick. He's kind of been slowing down. But I guess he was just quiet quitting on his team. I do think I have a Hopkins Mahomes team, which I would be less excited about just because Mahomes is not looking so hot. And also that team is infinite points behind. This team, maybe. I autoed this team. Or I didn't auto this team. I autoed Mahomes and then drafted it normally. But yeah, let's check out how often was Cooper paired with Josh Allen. Because obviously, like we'll compare with Kincaid. You would much rather have Cooper with Allen, only 2,000 of those teams, versus Allen with Kincaid, simply because there is 12,000 of those teams, right? So no one knew Cooper was going to get traded to the Bills. I do think the Devontae Adams one you could have kind of sussed out. Like you could have guessed that Devontae Adams would get traded. Like that was the only spot. So I do think this would be paired with more. Like I myself, when I took Devontae Adams, occasionally I would take Rodgers, just knowing I had outs to a trade. I don't know if I did it in BBM5 or other things, but yeah, I have some teams like that. They're dead. Jefferson, Adams, Brian Thomas, really the back guys killing me here. And ETN's killing me. And I only had Rodgers at quarterback for most of the season. Yeah, I mean, this is a good point. Derrick Henry teams have a 31. Our Gritty is only advancing 31% of his teams, but the overall advance rate for Henry is 49%. Yeah, so he is a below average Derrick Henry drafter. And that probably has to do with just the huge stance he takes. For example, he was probably advancing a lot less than 31% before Najee had some good games and Javonte had some good games. That's just how these things go, right? How many players have Godwin and Evans? 2,000 advancing teams. So a lot of these teams are going to struggle. What's Puka sitting at? I think it's like 5%. 5.6% for him. Cup. 10%. There's a lot of Dak Buck teams. That's interesting. Is there? Dak and what? Godwin or something? It's probably just how the board broke down. Right? This is one of the first articles I wrote about at Beat Best Ball. This article is totally free. And this was last year. Planning to get some more articles up like this, but this was last year an example of kind of what we're talking about here, where if you guys want to read this, I'll drop this here. I don't even think this requires like a free subscription. You can just read this one. But Lamb was paired with Amon-Ra 11,200 times. These guys who went near Lamb or went right next to Amon-Ra, 6,000, 4,000, 7,000, 5,000. So pairing Lamb with any of these guys was more unique than Amon-Ra. How much is the correlation worth versus uniqueness is a fair question. I don't know a hard answer there. And then Lamb and reaching on a guy so Lamb 1-2 turn player, Smith, Henry, Higgins, Olave 2-3 turn players. So the back end of the board correlate more with the 101, the 102, 103. There are almost no teams in the contest with these pairings, right? We said now, like the Bijan Puka team I have, that is very rare and even more valuable because it is a unique pairing that you could not manipulate. You couldn't do this on purpose. You had to get lucky to get this. This is always the most desirable to do, right? And you forego the opportunity to get this when you do reach on a guy, right? So if I had reached where Bijan was, I'm not getting the Bijan Puka even if Puka falls. But this year, I guess like a guy it's so hard because this year the second and third round did a lot of movement. So there was no guy who lived clearly at the 2-3 turn all year to me. Maybe Mike Evans. But yeah, I would guess a guy like Gibbs and Mike Evans is a very rare pairing because it required you to reach only 500 teams versus Gibbs and Garrett Wilson, or I don't know, Gibbs and Marvin Harrison. There's 9,000 teams. So this is an example of reaching for uniqueness and when we draft, people are like, "Oh no, like how could I dare take Mike Evans? He goes at the 2-3 turn and Marvin goes at the 1-2 turn. Like, why would I do that?" And you need to ask yourself, is pairing Gibbs with Marvin Harrison, should that be done roughly what? Like, was 9,000 divided by 500? Should that be done 18 times more often? Like, if you were playing a DFS week, would you want to pair Gibbs with Marvin at 18x the ownership, or Gibbs at Mike Evans at 18 times less ownership, and simply hope Evans outscores Marvin in a 1-week sample? Obviously, the Mike Evans thing for me. Um, so people talked about this, but they still didn't do it. I think Gibbs is a good anchor 1-2 turn player because he's lived there the whole draft season. I think another example, probably Neighbors. Like, Neighbors did fall to the 3-4 sometimes, but not that often. Yeah, 354. So he's another example you could have done it for. Or Metcalf didn't fall that often. 2,200. He did fall a little bit more. DJ Moore didn't fall that often. He did fall more though than Evan. Like, Evans and Neighbors are the two guys who stick out to me as like anchor 2-3 turn guys. Maybe Devonta Smith too. He opened as a 3-4, but he quickly lived at the 2-3 turn, so that was pretty rare. Cup saw big movement too. But yeah, these are just examples of like how to up your game. And again, like, okay, so the finals can only be so big, right? 500 teams. But when you're drafting in like a total points contest, this is even more important. And then even in a finals contest where the finals can only be 500 teams, if I land in a week 16 pod, a semifinal pod, I unquestionably would rather have the Gibbs and Mike Evans team than if there's like 3 Gibbs Marvin Harrison teams, right? I just give me the the me competing with just myself versus 2 other teams, right? Smith opened as a 3-4 turn, and he actually went to the 2-3 after the schedule release to correlate with CD Lamb. So he didn't live at 23, 26 the whole year. He lived there most of the year though. Yes, Ayuk and Debo were moved up a lot. Nico Collins was moved up a lot. But people didn't do it with Neighbors. They didn't do it with Mike Evans, clearly. They didn't do it with... There's really not as many other examples. I think something you could have done is you could have taken London at the 102 instead of Tyreek Hill, right? And London is going to be paired with Gibbs quite a bit. 4,400 teams. But how often is London paired with Neighbors? Very little. 832. So this would be an example of moving London up to the top half of the board to pair him with 2-3 guys more naturally, right? And there's many different examples of this on the draft board. So I guess I'm going to hang for, I don't know, 5-10 more minutes and then call it a stream. Got some work to do. I will be live tomorrow with my DFS breakdown. Please do be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll be trying to do a best ball roundtable once a week or so. I think I'm 70 subscribers away from 6K. So appreciate you guys. Yeah, Gibbs is another guy like London who you could have done it with. You could have taken Gibbs at the 1-2 turn. If there's no questions, I'll just end it. But got about 150 of you watching on this lovely Thursday afternoon. Any questions, folks? Any at all? I wonder if there's any Jefferson Chase teams. Like, did anyone get lucky enough to get that? No. Jefferson, Garrett Wilson. 3 teams in the contest. Chase, Garrett Wilson. 1 team in the contest. Stroke season. Gibbs, Henry, Achan. You just want to see the combos. This tool is pinned in my Discord by the way, which you can find below. There's 43 teams. You got it, Jason. Are Godwin, Shaheed teams completely dead? I mean, they're not completely dead because those guys were cheap enough. And honestly, like, the more injuries that occur, the better for you if you have Godwin and Shaheed. Not on your own team, but like if you have injured guys on your teams, you inherently want other teams to have injured players as well. But no, they're not completely dead. I do think the Chargers will try to trade for Mike Williams. Jason or Dell? Probably Dell for me. Bills slot corners and all pro. Chase Saquon, probably a lot of those. Though that was not a hard combo to get. So I mean, very valuable combo, but not hard. Yeah, 5,700. There's 20 Tom Brady teams. Yearly, it's calendar year, Jason. So if you signed up on August 1st, you would get everything through the next August. And obviously, like in-season content is what it is. I'm primarily a best ball website, so the two main things are the main things are BBM season, pre-draft best ball, so the big board, and then playoff best ball. So yeah, if you sign up now, you would have everything next year too. Yeah, I do think that's fair to question. I mean, I think the Ayuk thing was, he says, I got Ayuk, Watson, and Gabe Davis. I'm wondering if the two deep zone is like bad for this meta of wide receiver. I mean, Ayuk and Watson have dealt with injuries. But I think that's a fair question to ask about like the defensive meta. Jamar Chase 101 over next year? No, dude, it's Derrick Henry. No, I mean, he definitely like honestly, my true serum take would have been Chase 101. He was one of my highest drafted guys. I got 28 teams of him. Yeah, I think he's in contention. I mean Jefferson is in contention too. I think it was pretty bad not to draft more Jefferson. I did think the Vikings could struggle, but yeah, I wish I had more than 5 Jefferson teams. Your dream start? It's the Bijan Puka team, dude. That's a team for me. There's 20 Tom Brady teams. Yeah, that's an example. I mean, hey man, everything is crazy until it's not, right? Like all of a sudden, Kareem Hunt is very relevant. Could have been Tom Brady, you know? Thoughts on Keaton Mitchell? I think, he's not a guy right now, but yeah, he is a guy who could totally make his mark on the season where he super explosive. I think he can easily push aside Justice Hill. And yeah, he could be a huge thorn in Derrick Henry's side where Derrick Henry still going to be good at what he does, but Keaton Mitchell's a very explosive, good running back, and inherently means if he's scoring explosive long touchdowns, Henry is not. I didn't do any eliminators. I think Dell, you just got to be patient with. Yeah, I think that's fair. Maybe a running back or two in the mix. Chase, JJ Lamb, Amon-Ra, AJ Brown, you know. I don't know, Rusty this second, so not going to just say something to say something, but yeah, I would say it's probably like what I opened the show with like being purposeful about thinking through who was combined with what. Let's see Tua return first, Jason. Jameis team, dude. I mean, Jameis can make his mark. James Winston is not a user; he is a player. 423 Jameis teams. I'm a little perturbed I didn't draft any Hunt because he was good last year. Am I concerned with him? No, dude, he's healthy. Like, happy that he's healthy. Yes. This is just so true. One of the best things I've learned from you is not to try to get unique, be a long shot quarterback. They don't separate enough. So true. So like, yeah, I mean, you may be happy with your Jameis Winston team. I think it was bad process because the most likely result is you drafted a zero, and your pushback is, well, I landed a unique player. And I'm sorry, man, but like Jameis Winston, even if he's unique in the finals, he's how can he separate to win you it? He can't. He can't be Kyron Williams, right? He scores 25. Good for you. Is he the reason you won? No. Whereas if you draft a low owned tight end, running back, like Kareem Hunt scores 25, could he be the reason you won? Yes. He's no one else has him. And he plays a skill position. He doesn't play quarterback. I think McMillan will move into the slot, but it could be Shepard. So I mean, everything is there for him to be very good. I would say Jamison Williams, just because I drafted a lot in the past, and like every year I drafted him, and I didn't draft him this year as much, um, because I just thought it was like a little too expensive, and I didn't believe in like a full breakout. And yeah, I mean he's missing time now. But yeah, I regret not being in on the Jameson Williams experience. Like only having 2 teams after having like 25% the past years. Dude, relax, dude. I don't see every question, Augustus. Literally, I don't see your question. Scrolling. Maybe you just repost it like anyone else does. Maybe your question got deleted by the YouTube algorithm. Seriously, I don't see any question by you. Oh, wait, maybe I did. Would you say late drafts turned out to be better than early drafting? Yes and no. I mean, definitely landing Jordan Mason is worth it, but, like, if we look at my teams, some of these like, the day 1 contest teams, I'm very excited about, where they just have unique, um I guess it's easier to do it this way. They just have combos that you couldn't force, such as this team is funny because it's hit him with the gritty was in there. We're both advancing. And Amin, that's Fareed, who won last year. So 3 champions. Um, but like some of my favorite teams that I have were drafted day 1. So I want to go even harder on day 1. Such as like this team. Okay, it's not doing so hot right now, but if it was, having like McConkey and Coleman at cheap costs is pretty sick. But yeah, I mean, what's doing well about drafting late right now? Primarily Jordan Mason. Was it as good to draft late? Was it as good as last year drafting late? No. Last year was much better than this year. Because last year you had Kyron, you had Tank, you had a bunch, you know? Oh, I have a ton of Mike Williams in those puppies, dude. Like my top exposure player is Mike Williams because of the puppy, so I have to filter it down. Um, do you regret doing double elite tight end? I think that is a fair thing to think through. I probably did that a little too much. It's more of a playoff play. So am I gonna regret it if I win BBM5 because of it? No. But I do think it's like, yeah, it's fair that it's just tough to advance when you punt running back and wide receiver twice at the top of the rounds. I usually don't do in-season best ball because it's not very popular and it's not for very much money. Like, how much is first is in this? And also, it's a little like in-season best ball is a different game. We have a lot more info. versus preseason best ball, where I think we can have a bigger edge. All right, ladies and gents, I'm going to call it here. Appreciate you guys. Please do like, subscribe, leave a comment. Join the Discord, links below. Check out Liam Teaches Chess if you want some chess content in your life. Launch the chess channel, reviewing my tournament games. Yeah, I mean, this is fair, Rob, right? Like, that's just kind of unlucky. And defines the season where, okay, Elijah gets hurt, out for the year, and all the Jordan Mason teams smash because of it, right? Where Mason, what's his advance rate? 26%. Kind of low, honestly. I'm advancing 2 of my 8. All right, peace out, guys. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.